Okay, so for your last video for this lesson, I'm going to go over a few different details. So first, I have shown you the Dolly Parton quote where I have erased the grid. Now you can see there is still like a whole lot of smudging and stuff that would take me like forever to get rid of. So I'm going to show you what I would do and slash am doing. I've gone over the letters. You can still see all of the pencil in the centers of them. So then I'm going to take my pink eraser that, of course, I sat down and not find. Oh, here we go. Okay, and I'm going to go over and erase this really good. Now, that might mean, depending on what kind of pen you used and how good of a pen it is, or this is a felt tip marker. This is what I used. I used a Papermate Flare Medium. And I'm aware that, like, you know, I have a degree in art. I have an art studio at home. I have lots more selection options than you probably do at your house. So there's not going to be like a penalization or anything because you don't have like good products at home. You cannot help that. But if at all possible, I would not use a ballpoint pen, you know, just like your standard black ink pen. It's just not going to look super great. But if that's all you've got, then you'll just have to do the best you can with that. Okay, so I have erased all of this. And what I was saying when I started that sentence was that sometimes the marker will fade quite a bit when you erase on it. And so then you'll need to go back in and kind of go over those parts again. But this looks pretty good. So then after I've got all that off, and I would do it like, you know, I do all of, so this is what you would do if you are not putting watercolor down first. So if you're not using watercolor at all, because once you put water on this, even though it's supposed to be permanent ink, it will bleed. So you would have to put the watercolor down first. So this is what you're doing if you're using colored pencil. So you're gonna, originally I was gonna have you do it in a different order, but I think this will work best to get rid of all of the smudges. So you're going to go over everything in pen first, and I'm gonna show you in a minute how to do the pen part. But I'm trying to show you how to erase first. So if you are doing colored pencil, you're gonna do it like this first. Then you're gonna go back in and you're going to fill in all of your lines because you have done, you know, you've taken the time to go ahead and go around the outside of everything. And now you're just coming in and filling it back in. So like, honestly, this project, this is like, I mean, I think the easiest part is when you start using the pen because you did all the hard part over the last almost 3 weeks of laying it out in pencil, and then all those check-ins where I made you tweak things and, you know, change the size of your words and make things straight and all that. That was all the hard part. Now you're just kind of coloring like you're coloring in a coloring page or something. But you want to make sure you get your lines really clean when you're putting them down, which I'm going to go over with in a minute. Anyway, so that's what you do. You just fill it all in. Then, if you're doing the colored pencils, so I have an example that I made here just to show you a large example. Oh, and I'm going to grab something from behind me real quick. Okay, so this is, I think you guys have probably seen this in the room sometimes at school for an example on how to use colored pencils. So this is in colored pencil, and this design that I did back here is in a metallic silver colored pencil, and that's kind of what I'm going to do for this assignment. You can do whatever you want, but since you've got all of these words that you're trying to fill in, there's not like a lot of room for lots of designs and stuff. But if you wanted to, you could do a border, you could do lots of little, you know, flowers or different masculine designs. So do not feel like you have to do it the way I'm showing you. But this is a good way to cover a lot of space in a sort of abstract, modern way and have it be kind of a bit quicker. So what I'm going to do is I've picked these 3 colors of colored pencil, and these are not bad colored pencils at all, but they're not like the ones we used at school. I had those at home too, but I lent them to somebody. So these are just kind of, you know, better than Crayola, but not amazing. And, you know, again, not expecting you to have amazing colored pencils at your house. So you're just going to use what, you know, you've got as best you can. Or you could even use marker. And if you want to use marker, that's fine. Just make sure when you're getting close to the letters, it's really easy when you're using a marker to have the black from this pen and the color of your marker blend together. So you're going to want to be careful with that. I would probably stay, you know, kind of go up to the edge, but don't, you know, be super quick with it and have it get everywhere. So here's kind of an example of how I would do this. I kind of like map it out for myself. I want it to look, and this is obviously very light. And then, and you know, it's different when you're doing it around letters than it is when I was doing it around this, like, you know, large donut, where basically it's just filling in all the space however I want it to be filled in. Whereas this, I have to kind of go in between the letters. So I don't want it to look super random. I want it to look intentional. So I got to think about how I lay it out. But at the same time, I need it to not get all over the letters, because remember, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but if you go over marker with a colored pencil, even though it seems like it wouldn't cover up the marker or the pen, the black, it will. It might not completely cover it up, but it will definitely cover it up to the point where you need to fix it. And then the problem with that is that colored pencils are really waxy, and so then you go to use your pen to go back over it, and it gets all over your pen, and then all of a sudden your black pen won't work. So you want to be real careful with that. That's why I'm not getting too close to the pen. I mean, to the letters that were done in pen, because I don't want to get it on there and then, you know, feel like I have to go over it. Okay, so you can kind of see how it's starting to get a little bit of a shape. All right, and now I'm gonna pick this color. And, you know, it might be a good idea, especially if you are a perfectionist or a little bit more cautious, and you to try this out for practice, you know, on a piece of paper. You know, just throw a word down real fast and kind of figure out how you want it to look, versus just winging it and then being like, well, that did not turn out the way I wanted it. Because I can wing stuff sometimes, because, you know, I do this for a living, so I've done it a lot. But I certainly couldn't have done that probably when I was still in school, especially in junior high. So, you know, just think it out a little bit. And then I'm going to go back in and kind of add this here and there for a bit of a highlight. And that's kind of, you can see, like, this is not a very tedious process. I am pushing down pretty hard on the pencil, so if yours breaks while you're doing it, like, you know, don't be surprised. You can just sharpen it again. But you can see this is a pretty fast process. Now it's going to obviously be probably slower when you're doing it around the entire quote or verse tomorrow, because, you know, you've got a lot more to go around. But this is just to give you the general idea if you choose to do this as an option. Again, you can use, you know, you can do designs and make, you know, be inspired by Art Nouveau or Art Deco, like we have done with borders in the past, or whichever direction you want. Anyway, so that's kind of the general idea, and then I would probably just keep messing with it and add like darker sections of this and start messing with it until I kind of got it the way I want it. But this is the general idea. And what's nice about using colored pencil too is that especially if you have trouble getting some of your lines off the paper, and some of your examples that you guys have given me in the check-ins have had such dark lines, this is a good way to cover them up. So this is definitely better than just leaving your paper white. All right, so now I'm going to show you an example of what to do if you decide to use watercolor in the background. And just remember, if you did this on just regular copy paper for your printer, you're probably going to want to do the whole colored pencil thing or use a marker. But if you have a nicer paper and you want to use watercolor, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna get everything off the best you can erase wise first, which is what I've done. But if you had seen the paper before I watercolored it, there was a lot of smudging. So there was definitely still a lot of this kind of thing happening. It's like I cleaned up the lines, but there were still smudges everywhere. So I watercolored this in kind of a modern style of watercoloring, like I showed you yesterday how to do in the video. It was really fast and easy, and I did like a layer of this pink stuff. I used the blow dryer, did some red, blow dryer, went back and did some more pink. Took like maybe 10 minutes. So now I can see my words underneath, and I'm gonna go, and it's dry, you have to make sure it's dry. And then I turned it over and ironed it, because as you can see, it's kind of curling, so you can imagine the whole thing was really wobbly. So if you haven't watched that video from, I think 6 or 7 days ago on how to flatten your paper, you really need to do that. So now I'm gonna take my pen, and I'm going to just start going around all of my edges and keeping a tight hold on my pen. Now, make sure you pick up your pen anytime it starts to feel like you can't continue with the line that you're creating without, going crooked. I've noticed a lot through teaching that, like let's say I was going to draw a circle. I would draw a little bit more, a little bit more. I'd pick up my hand constantly and I'd be turning my paper. I've noticed that people will try to do the entire thing in one swoop, and then they're always kind of bummed when it doesn't turn out well, but I don't think it would turn out well for very many people. So you want to constantly be picking up your hand. So like I went to there, I picked up my hand. I'm going to go to here, pick up my hand. Here, pick up my hand. Now I'm turning my paper. And again, now this is a little bit wobbly right here, so I'm going to go back in and kind of fill it in. And that's kind of what I'm going to do for everything. Constantly looking at what I've done and seeing if I like the way the line looked, and then fixing it until I do. Now I'm going to fill in this line here. And then once I have it done, just like I showed you at the very beginning, I can color it in. You can also wait until you have completed the whole thing in terms of outlining the outside of each letter, and then fill it in, because you may find that there's certain letters you made a little bit thicker than you meant to, and so you need to tweak the ones next to it. It's just kind of figuring out what works for you. Okay, and so like you can see right here, I've made it like go in quite a bit, so I'm going to just extend my A a little bit and clean up that line. And get it looking polished. Until I kind of get the letter the way that I want. Okay, and yep, I'm just going to keep kind of reworking it a little bit until it kind of smooths out like I want. This camera is like literally right in front of my eye, so it's a little bit hard for me to get it how I want the first go through, because I can't see as well as I normally can. But, that's kind of the gist. And then I would just keep tweaking, and hopefully, it won't take you as long as it just took me to do that, because you'll be able to see better. And okay, so now I'm going to move on to the N. And you may also find as you go, like, let's say you have one pen and you like the pen, but you've only got one. Well, you may need to like do half of your letters in pen and then let your, you know, pen recover a little bit and then try again, because sometimes the tip at the end gets dried out because you're using the pen faster and with, you know, all this filling in of black more than it, I don't know, is designed to do. So it kind of dries out a little bit, but it's not really all the way dried out. Now sometimes it's just dried out, and if that happens, worst case scenario, Walmart is still open, so you can always run there and grab it if you need to, but hopefully that will not be something you have to deal with. All right, I'm going to move on to the letter D. And so the only thing that I would say that can be tricky about doing the pen and the lettering is just, you know, paying good attention to staying within the lines that you've created, which is why it's important that they are nice and cleaned up before you start on the pen. Because if you've got unfinished lines and you're thinking, oh, I'll just, you know, fix it when I move on to the pen, it's going to be a lot easier for you to have it not turn out the way you were hoping. So I would say not including the background part, which will just depend on what you choose to do. You should expect doing the pen part, the quote or the verse in pen alone should take at least an hour. And if you are doing it faster than that, your craftsmanship will not look like it should. And then you can see, like, I'm going back through and I'm finding like all the little dots where I missed like a spot here or there. And I'll do that now, and then I'll look at it when I'm finished too and be like, oh, did I miss anything else? Now I'm going to do the little quote mark right here. Yeah, and then, you know, tweak it a little bit, make it look more how I want. So that is the general idea of how you're going to do this. So we've done colored pencil, we've done watercolor, and we've gone over just how to erase to begin with. And remember, I'm gonna repost this tomorrow, the video on how to iron and erase really good without ripping your paper. So you guys are doing great. Your quotes and verse have come so far in the last few weeks. I'm really proud of you, and I am excited to see your finished product on Monday. Don't forget, even though this is due on Monday at midnight, we will be starting our next lesson during the day on Monday. All right, thanks guys.